Angola prison food, inside the kitchen of America's largest maximum security. The metal tray hits the concrete floor with a deafening crash. In the darkness of cell block D, an inmate stares at what's supposed to be breakfast, a gray, congealed mass that barely resembles food. This is Angola, Louisiana State Penitentiary, home to 6,300 inmates, sprawling across 18,000 acres of former slave plantation land. It's America's largest maximum security prison, and what happens in its kitchen is a story of survival, desperation, and the underground economy that keeps men alive. But this morning, something's different. The food that's been sliding through those metal slots isn't just bad, it's dangerous. And one inmate is about to expose a system that's been bleeding prisoners dry for decades. What he discovers in the kitchen will reveal a conspiracy that reaches from the lowest inmate workers to the highest prison officials. What he found will shock you. The question isn't whether you can survive Angola. It's whether you can survive what they're feeding you. They call it the farm, a name that hides the brutal reality of life behind these walls. Inside Angola's massive industrial kitchen, where 19,000 meals are prepared daily, the truth about prison food is darker than anyone on the outside could imagine. Inmates aren't just underfed, they're being systematically starved, poisoned by expired ingredients, and forced into an underground food economy where a single ramen packet can mean the difference between survival and violence. The inmate who works in that kitchen is about to risk everything to tell this story. His name doesn't matter. In Angola, names are replaced by numbers. But what he witnessed over 18 months will expose how America treats its most forgotten population. From expired meat relabeled and served to inmates, to guards selling fresh food on the black market, the kitchen at Angola is ground zero for a crisis that's been hidden for too long. This is what they don't want you to know. Before we go deeper into this story, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. Why? Because stories like this, real investigations into America's prison system, don't get told unless you support this channel. I bring you the truth that mainstream media won't touch. The corruption, the survival, the human cost. Every week, I expose what's really happening behind bars. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's hold this system accountable together. Now, let's get back to Angola and see how this nightmare begins. The loudspeakers crackle to life at exactly 4:30 a.m. Count time. All inmates to your bunks. In cell block D, home to 800 of Angola's most hardened criminals, men rise from thin mattresses that offer no comfort. They've been awake for hours anyway, hunger doesn't let you sleep. The inmate in cell 47 has been up since 3 a.m., his stomach cramping from whatever passed as dinner the night before. He's been down for 6 years on a 25-year sentence. Armed robbery. In that time, he's lost 40 pounds, not from exercise or choice, but from malnutrition. His teeth are loose from vitamin deficiency. His skin shows the telltale signs of scurvy, a disease most Americans thought disappeared in the 1800s. But in Angola, it's common. The Louisiana Department of Corrections allocates $2.87 per inmate per day for food. That's less than most people spend on a coffee. $2.87 per day per inmate. But even that meager amount doesn't make it to the plates. This inmate knows why. He works in the kitchen. The kitchen workers are the first to move through Angola's corridors each morning. 23 inmates, selected not for culinary skill but for compliance, march in single file toward the massive industrial complex that feeds the entire prison. The inmate from cell 47 is among them, his hands still stained from yesterday's work, beet juice mixed with something darker. Angola's kitchen is a cathedral of stainless steel and steam, built in 1978 and barely updated since. Industrial mixers that could hold a grown man. Ovens the size of prison cells. Refrigeration units that break down weekly, leaving meat to spoil in Louisiana's brutal heat. The kitchen supervisor, a free-world employee making $32,000 a year, won't arrive until 7 a.m. Until then, inmate workers have unsupervised access to everything. This is when the real work happens. Not cooking, surviving. The inmate checks the walk-in cooler, noting the temperature gauge reading 55 degrees. It should be 40. The chicken delivered yesterday is already turning. He knows what comes next. They'll cook it anyway. The inmate pulls out the breakfast rations, 300 pounds of ground beef marked with yesterday's date, except the label's been changed. He peels back the sticker to reveal the original, 11 days ago. This meat should have been discarded a week and a half ago. Instead, it's been relabeled 3 times, each sticker covering the last. This is the beef going into this morning's gravy. But it gets worse. In the dry storage room, he finds 50-pound bags of flour infested with weevils. The bread dough mixed yesterday is spotted with insect larvae. The eggs, purchased in liquid form to save money, smell of sulfur and rot. He's reported these violations before. Nothing changed. The prison gets its food from the lowest bidder, companies that supply expired and rejected products from grocery chains. A fellow inmate worker, Marcus, whispers the real scandal: they taking the good stuff out before we even see it. He's right. The fresh produce, quality meat, and name-brand items donated to the prison never make it to inmate plates. Guards and kitchen supervisors load it into their personal vehicles, selling it outside or taking it home. Theft. Corruption. Survival. What's left is waste, literally. The breakfast bell rings across Angola's cell blocks. Inmates line up with their metal trays, watching as kitchen workers slop gray gravy over hard biscuits. The gravy is thin, more water than meat, seasoned with nothing but salt. No pepper. Pepper is contraband because inmates use it to make weapons. The biscuits are dense and tasteless, made from the cheapest flour and lard. Our inmate watches from his position behind the serving line. He sees men who haven't had a decent meal in months, years, some in decades. One older inmate, doing life without parole, trembles as he holds his tray. Malnutrition has given him permanent nerve damage. Another shows signs of pellagra, a disease caused by niacin deficiency, marked by dermatitis and dementia. The portions are measured precisely: 4 ounces of gravy, 2 biscuits, 1 bruised apple. The Louisiana Department of Corrections requires 2,500 to 2,800 calories per day per inmate. On paper, this breakfast provides 600 calories. In reality, most inmates can't stomach enough of it to reach even that. They eat what they can, then retreat to their cells, still hungry. Required, 2,500 calories. Reality, under 1,500. This is where the underground economy begins. Back in the cells, the actual feeding starts. Inmates pull out their contraband: ramen noodles purchased from the commissary at 3 times the outside price, canned mackerel, squeezed cheese, hot sauce packets hoarded from months of meals. They've created spreads, prison meals made by combining commissary items with whatever edible scraps they can salvage from the cafeteria. The inmate watches as his cellmate, a man named Deshawn, creates an elaborate spread in a trash bag. He crushes 4 ramen packets, adds hot water from the sink, throws in a pouch of mackerel, chips, cheese, and hot sauce. He ties the bag shut and wraps it in a towel, letting it steam. In 15 minutes, he'll have something that actually resembles food. But this meal costs $12 in commissary items. Deshawn makes 4 cents per hour working in the prison's license plate factory. It takes him 300 hours of work, nearly 2 months, to afford 1 decent meal. Most inmates can't afford commissary at all. They depend on family members depositing money into their accounts. Those without family support slowly starve. Prison wage, 4 cents per hour. Ramen cost, $1.25. The inmate realizes the system is designed this way. Keep them hungry. Make them desperate. Control them through their stomachs. The guard appears without warning. Cell inspection, Block D. Inmates scramble to hide their contraband food, but it's too late. The guards tear through cells, dumping out carefully hidden ramen stashes, confiscating hot pots and makeshift cooking devices. They destroy spreads that inmates spent their last money creating. One inmate protests: the ramen was purchased legally from commissary. The guard doesn't care. Hoarding food is a violation. The inmate's write-up means 15 days in the hole, solitary confinement. In the hole, he'll receive even less food, 2 meals a day, no commissary privileges, no way to supplement the meager rations. Our kitchen worker inmate watches this happen and understands what's really going on. The guards confiscate legal commissary food, then resell it to other inmates at markup prices. It's a racket that generates thousands of dollars monthly. The warden knows. The administration knows. Nobody stops it because everyone's getting paid. As the guards leave with bags of confiscated food, the inmate makes a decision. He's going to document everything happening in that kitchen. Every violation, every theft, every poisoned meal. What he records will expose everything. But first, he has to survive lunch service. The Cisco truck backs up to Angola's loading dock, and the inmate is assigned to unloading duty. This is where he sees the scam in broad daylight. The manifest says the delivery includes 500 pounds of fresh chicken breast, 200 pounds of ground beef, 50 heads of lettuce, 30 pounds of tomatoes, and cases of canned vegetables. What actually gets unloaded? 500 pounds of chicken parts, mostly backs and necks, the cheapest cuts, 200 pounds of ground beef so fatty it's almost pink, wilted lettuce already browning at the edges, tomatoes so overripe they're bursting, and dented cans rejected by grocery stores. The invoice, however, charges the Louisiana Department of Corrections for premium products. The kitchen supervisor, a man named Mr. Hebert, appears. He doesn't inspect the delivery. Instead, he meets privately with the truck driver behind the loading dock. The inmate watches from his position near the loading ramp. Money changes hands. Then Mr. Hebert directs specific boxes to be loaded into his pickup truck, the actual fresh chicken, real ground beef, unblemished produce. These items never enter the prison kitchen. Premium food ordered. Garbage delivered. The difference, profit. The driver leaves. The contaminated, expired, and inferior food gets stored in Angola's walk-in coolers and freezers. This is what 6,300 inmates will eat for the next week. The inmate works alongside 3 other kitchen workers who become essential to understanding Angola's food system. There's Marcus, 42, serving life for murder, who's worked in the kitchen for 8 years and knows every scam. There's Tony, a younger inmate doing 15 for drug distribution, who's lost 60 pounds since arriving 2 years ago. And there's Old Man Joe, 73, who's been incarcerated for 51 years and remembers when Angola fed inmates fresh vegetables from the prison farm. Marcus explains how the system evolved. Used to be, we grew most of our food right here. Angola had farms, gardens, cattle. Inmates worked the land, and we ate what we grew. Fresh collard greens, corn, tomatoes, even meat we raised ourselves. Then they privatized. Sold the contracts to corporations. Now we get whatever garbage they can't sell to anyone else. Tony adds his observation, it's not just about saving money. They want us weak. Hungry men don't fight back. Hungry men are easier to control. You ever notice they feed us better right before they know there's gonna be trouble? Before lockdowns, before transfers. They fatten us up just enough to keep us calm. Old Man Joe is the most cynical, they're killing us slowly. That's the truth. Feed us poison, charge our families for commissary, and pocket the difference. 50 years of incarceration. 50 years of the same system. Lunch is supposed to be beans and rice with a piece of cornbread. What comes out of the kitchen is watery beans with visible weevils, rice that's undercooked and crunchy, and cornbread so dry it crumbles into dust. An inmate at the front of the line refuses his tray. Man, I can't eat this. There's bugs in the beans. The kitchen supervisor appears. Eat it or go hungry. Your choice. The inmate doesn't back down. This violates health codes. You're serving contaminated food. Mr. Hebert's response is swift, write him up. Insolence and creating a disturbance. 2 guards escort the inmate away. He'll spend the next week in administrative segregation, the hole, for refusing to eat poisoned food. The message is clear to every other inmate in that line, shut up and eat, or face punishment. Our kitchen worker inmate serves the contaminated beans, watching as men force down food that makes them sick. He knows what happens next. By tonight, dozens of inmates will have stomach cramps, diarrhea, vomiting. The infirmary will be overwhelmed. Guards will claim it's a flu outbreak. But it's not the flu. It's food poisoning from beans that sat at room temperature for 6 hours before being served. It's rice contaminated with rodent droppings from the dry storage area. It's systematic negligence dressed up as cost-saving measures. Refuse to eat, punishment. Eat poison, sickness. There's no winning. During cleanup, the inmate is sent to Mr. Hebert's office to retrieve cleaning supplies. The supervisor is gone, and the office is unlocked, a rare opportunity. On the desk, he finds something that changes everything: invoice records and payment receipts from the past 6 months. The documents reveal the full scope of the scam. Louisiana pays Angola $2.87 per inmate per day for food. With 6,300 inmates, that's $18,081 per day, or $6.6 million per year. But the actual food purchases, the inferior, expired, and contaminated products being delivered, cost only $1.12 per inmate per day. That's $7,056 daily in actual food costs. The difference? $11,025 per day. Over $4 million per year that disappears into a black hole of corruption. The documents show payments to shell companies, kickbacks to suppliers, and bonuses to prison administrators. Mr. Hebert alone has received $47,000 in consulting fees from the food service company in the past year, more than his actual salary. The inmate uses his contraband cell phone, a whole other violation, to photograph every document. He knows this evidence could bring down the entire operation. But he also knows that exposing it could get him killed. In Angola, snitches don't survive long. $4 million stolen annually. From the hungry. He hears footsteps approaching and quickly exits the office. Too late, Mr. Hebert saw him leaving. Mr. Hebert corners the inmate in the kitchen's back corridor. "What were you doing in my office?" The inmate lies, "Looking for the mop bucket like you told me." The supervisor steps closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I didn't tell you nothing about my office. You better not have touched anything in there, boy. You understand me?" The threat is clear. Mr. Hebert knows inmates have been beaten, stabbed, even killed for crossing the wrong people in Angola. Kitchen workers have access to knives, boiling water, industrial cleaning chemicals. Accidents happen. The inmate nods, keeps his eyes down, plays submissive. But inside, his mind is racing. He has the evidence. He has proof of millions in stolen money, of systematic abuse, of inmates being poisoned for profit. But who can he tell? The guards are in on it. The warden's administration gets a cut. Even the Louisiana Department of Corrections benefits from the reduced costs and looks the other way at the corruption. Marcus appears, breaking the tension. "Boss, we got a problem with the freezer unit again. Temperature's climbing." Mr. Hebert storms off, but not before giving the inmate one last threatening look. Marcus whispers, "He knows you saw something. You're in danger now, brother. Real danger. In Angola, knowing too much can get you killed." The inmate has to make a choice: stay silent and survive, or speak up and risk everything. In the quiet of the dry storage room, surrounded by bags of weevil-infested flour and expired canned goods, the inmate sits on an overturned bucket and considers his options. He thinks about the men he serves every day. The old-timer with scurvy. The young kid who's lost so much weight his uniform hangs off his frame. The fathers who can't afford commissary because they're sending what little money their families have back home to their children. He thinks about the system that brought him here, a broken justice system that warehouses human beings and profits from their suffering. He's 6 years into a 25-year sentence. He has 19 years left in this hell. Does he really want to spend them looking over his shoulder, waiting for retaliation? But then he remembers why he's documenting this in the first place. His younger brother is facing charges on the outside. If convicted, he'll end up in a place like this, eating poison, losing his health, becoming another statistic in America's mass incarceration machine. Maybe exposing this corruption can change something. Maybe it can save someone. The inmate pulls out his contraband phone. The photos of the financial documents are still there. He begins typing an email to a prison reform advocacy group, attaching the evidence. Some choices define who you are. Before he can hit send, the door opens. Okay, stop for a second. Put yourself in his position. You've got evidence that could expose a multi-million-dollar corruption scheme, but reporting it could get you killed. You're already serving 25 years in America's largest maximum security prison. Do you risk your life to expose the truth, or do you stay quiet and survive? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to know what you would do. And smash that like button if this story is blowing your mind, because what happens next gets even crazier. Now let's see what he decides. It's Tony, another kitchen worker. Boss wants to see you after count. Says you got a new assignment. The inmate knows what this means. He's being removed from the kitchen, away from access to evidence, away from witnesses. They're isolating him. During yard time, he observes Angola's brutal social hierarchy shaped entirely by access to food. The gang leaders, those connected to money on the outside, are noticeably healthier. They run the commissary trade, controlling who gets extra food and at what price. A ramen packet that costs $1.25 in commissary sells for $3 in the cells. A pouch of tuna, $2.50 in commissary, $6 on the yard. The markup is insane, but desperate men pay it. He watches a young inmate, barely 21, approach a gang leader. The kid is rail thin, visibly malnourished. Man, I need food. I ain't eaten right in 3 days. My people can't send money right now. The gang leader looks him over. You want food? You work for us. We need someone to hold some contraband. You good with that? The kid hesitates. Holding contraband means risking additional charges, more time. But hunger overrides caution. He nods. This is how the gangs recruit, through starvation. The prison's food policy isn't just neglect, it's a recruitment tool for prison gangs. Hunger creates desperation. Desperation creates control. Marcus pulls the inmate aside, away from the cameras and prying eyes. I know what you found in Hebert's office. I know what you're planning. The inmate's heart races. Has Marcus betrayed him already? But Marcus continues, I want in. I want to help expose this. Marcus reveals his own evidence, photographs taken over months showing guards loading fresh food into personal vehicles, videos of expired meat being relabeled, recordings of Mr. Hebert discussing kickbacks with suppliers. I've been collecting evidence for 2 years, Marcus explains. But I couldn't risk sending it out. I'm doing life, they can't add time, but they can make my life here hell. Or end it. Together, they have a comprehensive case. Financial records, photographic evidence, eyewitness testimony from multiple kitchen workers. But Marcus has a warning, there's a CO, Officer Daniels, who's not part of the scam. He's tried to report violations before, got shut down by administration. If we can get this evidence to him, he might help us get it outside these walls. The plan is risky. Officer Daniels could be a trap. He could report them to the warden, leading to immediate retaliation. But without an ally on the outside, their evidence dies inside Angola's walls with them. Trust is dangerous. But necessary. They agree to approach Officer Daniels during dinner service tonight. While preparing for dinner service, Tony discovers something horrifying in the back storage area. There's a locked freezer that kitchen workers aren't allowed to access. Mr. Hebert keeps the only key. But the lock is broken today, hanging loose. Tony opens it. Inside, hundreds of pounds of meat marked, not for human consumption. These are expired products from rendering plants, meant for pet food or industrial use. Some packages are dated from 8 months ago. The stench is overwhelming. But Tony recognizes the packaging. These are the same products they've been serving to inmates for weeks. The inmate and Marcus join him, documenting everything with their phones. This isn't just about theft anymore. This is about prison officials knowingly feeding inmates contaminated, non-food grade products and profiting from the price difference. It's poisoning on an industrial scale. Old Man Joe appears, having worked in the kitchen long enough to have seen this before. They've been doing this for years. Back in the 90s, there was an outbreak. 40 inmates got E. coli from bad meat. 3 died. State came in, investigated, promised reforms. 2 months later, same thing. They just got better at hiding it. The inmate realizes the scale of what they're exposing. This isn't isolated to Angola. Louisiana operates 8 state prisons, all using the same food service contractor, all likely running the same scam. 8 prisons. 30,000 inmates. Millions stolen. How many people have gotten sick? How many have died? Officer Daniels enters the kitchen for his routine pre-dinner inspection. He's in his late 30s, one of the few black corrections officers in a prison where racial dynamics run deep. The inmates have noticed he's different. He doesn't participate in the casual cruelty, doesn't take bribes, actually enforces safety regulations when he can. Marcus makes the approach. Officer Daniels, can we talk? Privately? Daniels is immediately suspicious. Inmates don't seek private conversations with guards unless something's wrong. They move to the loading dock area, out of camera range. The inmate presents everything: the financial documents, the photos of contaminated food, the evidence of systematic theft. He watches Daniels' face carefully, looking for any sign of betrayal. Instead, he sees anger. I knew something was wrong. I've reported violations before, they buried my complaints. How long has this been going on? Daniels reveals his own frustration. I've worked in corrections for 12 years. I believe in rehabilitation, in treating inmates with dignity. But this place, it's corrupt from top to bottom. I've tried to make changes, tried to report abuse. They threatened to fire me, blackball me from law enforcement entirely. Then comes the twist, but my sister works for the ACLU in New Orleans. She's been looking for a way to expose conditions in Louisiana prisons. If I can get her this evidence, she can make it public, file lawsuits, force federal investigation. An unexpected ally. A chance for justice. The inmates have found their way out. But is Officer Daniels who he seems to be? Dinner service explodes into chaos. Inmates from lunch are collapsing in the chow hall, doubled over with stomach cramps. The contaminated beans from earlier have hit hard, food poisoning on a mass scale. Men are vomiting, some bleeding from their mouths where vitamin deficiency has made their gums fragile. The infirmary is overwhelmed. The prison has 2 nurses on staff for 6,300 inmates. They're triaging, sending the worst cases to the local hospital in shackles, telling others to ride it out in their cells. One inmate, an older man with diabetes, goes into shock. His body can't handle the combined stress of malnutrition and food poisoning. Mr. Hebert appears, panicked. He's barking orders, lock down the kitchen. Nobody talks about what was served today. This is a flu outbreak, you understand? Flu, not food poisoning. He's already destroying evidence, dumping the remaining contaminated beans, bleaching surfaces, threatening kitchen workers with segregation if they say anything. But Officer Daniels is documenting everything. He's photographing the sick inmates, the destroyed evidence, Mr. Hebert's panic. He calls the warden's office to report a medical emergency and requests outside health inspectors. The warden refuses. That refusal is its own evidence. The administration knows what's happening and is actively covering it up. 50+ inmates sick. 3 hospitalized. 0 accountability. The inmate realizes this is the moment. The evidence is overwhelming. The outbreak proves everything. The prison goes into emergency lockdown. All inmates are confined to cells. No movement, no phone calls, no commissary. The administration's official statement: due to a medical situation, Angola is implementing temporary restricted movement protocols. The reality: they're buying time to cover up the outbreak and identify who might talk. In his cell, the inmate watches guards go cell to cell, confiscating contraband phones. They're conducting random searches, but it's not random, they're targeting kitchen workers. When they reach his cell, they tear it apart. They find nothing. He'd given his phone to Officer Daniels hours earlier, trusting a man he barely knows with evidence that could free him or get him killed. Marcus isn't as lucky. Guards find his phone, loaded with incriminating photos and videos. They drag him out of his cell, heading to administrative segregation. As he passes the inmate's cell, Marcus makes eye contact. No words, but the message is clear: don't let this be for nothing. Tony is terrified. Man, we're dead. They're gonna figure out who talked, and we're dead. Even old man Joe, who's seen everything in 51 years, looks shaken. I've seen men disappear for less than this. They'll transfer us to different prisons, split us up, make sure we can't corroborate each other's stories. The inmate realizes Officer Daniels is their only hope now. But there's been no word from him since the lockdown began. Evidence collected. Allies arrested. Hope fading. Night falls on Angola, and in the darkness, anything can happen. Hours pass in silence. The inmate lies on his bunk, listening to the sounds of men suffering in neighboring cells, groaning from food poisoning, crying from fear, the awful silence of resignation. He thinks about his family, his brother who might end up in a place like this. He thinks about all the men who've died slowly in America's prisons, poisoned by neglect and greed. At 10:47 p.m., his cell door opens. It's Officer Daniels, alone. We need to move fast. I sent everything to my sister 3 hours ago. She's already filed emergency motions with the federal court and contacted the media. By tomorrow morning, this is going to be public. But tonight, they're coming for you. Daniels explains, Mr. Hebert figured out who accessed his office. The warden has ordered the inmate transferred to David Wade Correctional Center, Louisiana's most violent prison, on fabricated assault charges. It's a death sentence. Inmates who cross the administration don't survive transfers to Wade. I'm getting you into protective custody tonight, Daniels says. Federal facility, outside Louisiana's prison system. The ACLU is filing an emergency writ for your protection. You'll testify in federal court about everything you've seen. But there's a cost: your testimony will add charges. Possession of contraband phone, unauthorized documentation, violation of prison policies. Could add years to your sentence. The inmate doesn't hesitate. I don't care about more time. I care about exposing this. Sometimes the right thing isn't the safe thing. Daniels escorts him out of the cell block, away from Angola's death trap. They move through Angola's corridors, avoiding cameras, using maintenance passages that Daniels knows from his years on the job. The inmate can hear his heart pounding. If they're caught, Daniels loses everything: his job, his pension, possibly faces criminal charges for helping an inmate. They reach the administration building where federal marshals are waiting. Daniel's sister worked fast, getting court orders for protective custody. But as they approach the exit, they hear voices. Mr. Hebert and 2 guards are coming down the hall, discussing the transfer order for the inmate. Daniels makes a split-second decision. He handcuffs the inmate and starts walking him toward the group, as if conducting a routine cell transfer. Mr. Hebert stops them. Were you taking that inmate? Daniels keeps his voice steady. Medical check. He reported chest pains. Mr. Hebert isn't buying it. Bullshit. He's being transferred to Wade tomorrow. Take him back to his cell. The 2 guards move to take custody of the inmate. This is the moment everything could collapse. But Daniels stands firm. Federal marshals are here with a protective custody order. He's leaving Angola tonight. He hands over the court documents. Mr. Hebert's face goes white as he reads the emergency writ and sees charges being filed against prison officials for systematic abuse. "You're finished," Mr. Hebert spits at Daniels. "Your career is over." Daniels replies calmly, "Good. I don't want a career built on poisoning prisoners." One man's courage against a corrupt system. The federal marshals take custody, and the inmate leaves Angola for the last time. By 6 a.m., the story explodes across Louisiana and national news. Mass food poisoning at Angola Prison, millions stolen from inmate food funds, federal investigation launched into Louisiana prison system. The evidence provided by Officer Daniels and the inmates is overwhelming and irrefutable. The shocking revelation comes from forensic analysis of the financial records. The corruption isn't limited to Angola. All 8 Louisiana state prisons are running identical scams, managed by the same food service contractor with kickbacks going to officials at every level. The total theft, over $28 million annually stolen from food budgets meant to feed 30,000 incarcerated people. But the deepest revelation is who benefits. The food service contractor is owned by a shell company that traces back to a Louisiana state senator, the same senator who chairs the committee overseeing prison funding and contracts. He's been personally profiting from starving prisoners while publicly advocating for tough-on-crime policies. Federal agents raid Angola at dawn, arresting Mr. Hebert, the warden, and 4 other administrators. Across Louisiana, simultaneous raids hit the other prisons. The food service contractors' offices are sealed. Bank accounts are frozen. The state senator resigns hours before his arrest. The inmates in Angola watch on the common room televisions as their suffering becomes national news. For the first time in years, they feel seen. $28 million stolen. 30,000 victims. Justice incoming. But the fight isn't over. It's just beginning. The emergency federal hearing is packed. Media, prison reform advocates, families of inmates, all watching as the inmate takes the stand. He's still in his prison uniform, shackled at the ankles but given permission to testify freely. For the first time in 6 years, he speaks to people who are actually listening. He describes the weevil-infested flour, the meat marked not for human consumption, the men suffering from diseases America thought were eradicated a century ago. He presents the financial documents showing exactly how much money was stolen and where it went. He names names, dates, specific incidents. The defense attorneys try to discredit him. He's a convicted felon, an armed robber, a criminal. But then Officer Daniels testifies, corroborating every detail. Then Marcus, brought from solitary to testify via video link. Then Tony. Then Old Man Joe, who describes 51 years of watching the same abuse cycle repeat. The federal prosecutor presents evidence that shocks even the seasoned judge. Laboratory analysis of food samples taken from Angola shows E. coli, salmonella, and toxic levels of bacterial contamination. Medical records show hundreds of inmates treated for malnutrition-related diseases over the past 5 years. Death certificates show at least 17 inmates died from complications directly linked to food poisoning and malnutrition. The judge's ruling is immediate and sweeping. All Louisiana state prisons are placed under federal oversight. The food service contract is terminated. Emergency funding is allocated for immediate nutrition improvement. Criminal charges are filed against 32 prison officials and contractors. One man's courage. Systematic change. Justice, for once, is served. Federal health inspectors and Bureau of Prisons officials take control of Angola's kitchen. The entire facility is condemned and shut down for deep cleaning. Inmates are fed MREs, meals ready to eat, from federal emergency supplies. Ironically, military rations are more nutritious than what they've been eating. The inspector's report is damning. Every health code violation imaginable, equipment in disrepair, evidence of rodent infestation, temperature controls non-functional for months. One inspector, a 20-year veteran, tells reporters, "I've inspected disaster zones and military conflict areas. Angola's kitchen was worse than refugee camps I've seen in war zones." For the inmates watching this unfold, there's a mixture of vindication and rage. Old Man Joe, allowed to speak to media for the first time in decades, says it plainly, "They treated us worse than animals. At least animals get fed food meant for their species." The immediate changes are dramatic. Fresh produce is delivered from local farms. Real meat, properly stored and prepared. Meals are prepared by professional cooks, not untrained inmates. Portions increase. Variety improves. Within days, inmates notice differences: more energy, better health, hope. But the inmate who started it all isn't at Angola to see these changes. He's in federal protective custody, awaiting trial on his original charges, now complicated by additional counts for the contraband phone and unauthorized documentation. Victory comes with a price. His fight for justice might cost him more years behind bars. The trials conclude with sweeping convictions. Mr. Hebert, 15 years federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and civil rights violations. The Warden of Angola, 22 years. The food service contractor executives, sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. The state senator, 30 years for corruption, racketeering, and conspiracy. But the biggest victory comes in civil court. A class action lawsuit filed on behalf of all 30,000 Louisiana State inmates results in a $380 million settlement. Each inmate who was fed contaminated food receives compensation. Families of the 17 inmates who died receive substantial wrongful death settlements. The federal oversight of Louisiana prisons becomes permanent, with strict nutritional standards enforced. The state is required to hire licensed nutritionists, upgrade kitchen facilities, and provide regular health inspections. Food budgets are tripled and protected from administrative theft. Officer Daniels is hailed as a hero by prison reform advocates. He leaves the corrections system and becomes a consultant for the ACLU, working on prison reform nationwide. His testimony helped expose similar schemes in 3 other states, leading to federal investigations across the country. Marcus is released on parole after his life sentence is commuted due to his cooperation and evidence of rehabilitation. He becomes an advocate for prison food reform. Tony's sentence is reduced, and he's transferred to a re-entry program. Old Man Joe, at 74, is granted clemency after 51 years and walks free, tasting real food for the first time in half a century. Justice delayed is justice denied. But justice achieved is transformation. And the inmate who started it all? The inmate's story has a complex ending. His additional charges for possessing the contraband phone and unauthorized documentation were dropped as part of his cooperation agreement. More significantly, his original sentence was reduced by a federal judge who cited his extraordinary courage in exposing systematic human rights abuses. He served 9 years total, 3 more than originally expected when he took the photos in Mr. Hebert's office, but 16 fewer than he might have served. Today, he's free, working with the same ACLU office that helped expose the Angola food scandal. He travels to prisons across America, documenting conditions and advocating for reform. Angola itself has been transformed. The kitchen is now a model facility, used for training culinary programs. Inmates can earn certificates in food service, gaining actual job skills. The meals, while institutional, are nutritious, safe, and prepared with dignity. Scurvy, pellagra, and malnutrition-related diseases have been virtually eliminated from Louisiana's prison system. But he knows the work isn't finished. America incarcerates 2.3 million people in prisons, jails, and detention centers. Many still face conditions similar to what Angola was. The systematic dehumanization continues in facilities across the country, hidden behind walls where the public doesn't look. When asked if exposing the Angola scandal was worth the additional time he served, his answer is immediate: every day. Those men needed someone to care enough to risk something. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who couldn't keep watching them suffer. One prison exposed. Thousands still hidden. The fight continues. The story of Angola's kitchen is the story of American mass incarceration, cruelty disguised as policy, profit extracted from suffering, and the courage required to expose it. This is why this channel exists. To tell the stories nobody else will tell. To expose the corruption that thrives in darkness. To give a voice to the voiceless. The Angola food scandal changed lives, reformed a system, and proved that one person's courage can make a difference. But there are thousands of stories like this still untold. Prisons across America where the same abuse continues. Inmates suffering in silence because nobody's watching. That's where you come in. Subscribe to this channel right now. We're building a community that demands accountability and justice. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an investigation. Next week, I'm exposing the medical care crisis in federal prisons. What happens when inmates can't get treatment for serious diseases? It's another scandal that will shock you. You won't want to miss it. Share this video with everyone you know. Post it on social media. Tag your representatives. Demand that they investigate conditions in your state's prisons. Change happens when enough people care. Remember the inmate from Angola. Remember that he risked everything because he believed exposing the truth mattered more than his own safety. We owe it to him and to every person behind bars to keep fighting for justice. This is your host, signing off. Stay angry. Stay informed. And never stop demanding better. Justice for all. Even the forgotten.